You could also call it a lecture. I don't. I'm assuming that it's gonna get bashed or something. I don't really care. I'm kind of over it. Um, so if you want to make $1 million, and you can translate Kurtlish, because that's what I'm gonna give the lecture slash sermon in, then you can win $1 million. You just have to write this paper up in proper, and you have to somehow get past all of the fucking narcs and haters and not get put on their list of failures, but instead convince the Clay Mathematics Institute that this is the proper answer somehow. Somehow, by the grace of God, you can convince the Clay Mathematics Institute that this is the proper answer, and then they'll give you $1 million cash prize. It's really hard to do. I don't think you'll succeed, but you can try. And I don't really care that, like, I came up with the answer and you get because I don't want your money, I don't want your fame, I don't want any of it. I just want people to tell the truth, because this is the truth. And Einstein was a strict determinist, and you guys should just, like, I don't know, listen to the man instead of just praising him as a genius and saying that his intellectual capacities are far beyond anyone else's. Just listen to him. He was a follower of Spinoza, who I am a follower of, and if Spinoza came after Alan Turing, he would have laughed in your faces. If Spinoza came by the time that they made non-deterministic Turing machines, if Spinoza came around the time of Stephen Cook regurgitating Kurt Gödel's words and saying that he came up with an NTM solver of a bounded and Shining's problem, and that he doesn't know whether or not the deterministic solver can do the same thing, he would have laughed in your face. Spinoza would have laughed in your face. Stephen Cook, congratulations. You are a genius. You created a bounded solver for Shining's problem. It's genius what you did. You have proved the certificate to be the determiner. Unfortunately, after you proved this, you then didn't take it all the way and figure out that determinism is equal to non-determinism, and that everything is determined and the certificate is the answer is the answer. Instead, you decide to pose this obscene question. Obscene really isn't the proper word here, but I've been using it a lot, especially in my videos, so we'll go with it. You decided to pose this question on whether or not determinism can do the same thing, which is an interesting problem in its outset. But if you just decided to look at it, you could have seen that the non-deterministic machine is necessarily doing, based on its knowledge, a determined thing, because you can only be in one state at once. It's a classical Turing machine, so at any time t, you can't be in multiple configurations, you can only be in one. So even if you have a number of choices, you can only take one choice. So your delta at t is only 1. What I'm trying to prove eventually is that non-deterministic Turing machines are just a set of deterministic Turing machines, and I am actually going to prove that right now. Okay, are you ready? Are you ready, folks? This is how you build the machine that can end cryptography and TLS. All you have to do is very simple. It's very, very simple. Is take a cloud database and in it encode a rainbow table for polycomplete problem. I choose 3SAT because 3SAT's my favorite. So just encode the answers to 3SAT in the cloud database, and then you can just convert whatever encoding protocol you're going against to the 3SAT variant and query. Necessarily, your database would have to be infinite in order to prove sigma star, which is the input alphabet starred, recursively iterated upon. So, you would need infinite states. Fortunately, based on Theorem 3.16 and Michael Sipser's Introduction to Theory of Computation, all non-deterministic Turing machines have a deterministic variant, and it's such that each configuration in the non-deterministic Turing machine is a deterministic state Q. So, in order to solve sigma star and your deterministic Turing machine for polytime complete by just choosing the right answer and then verifying it, you need infinite configurations. Therefore, in my deterministic Turing machine, I am allowed to have infinite cube, motherfuckers. So, if you want to say that my Turing machine does not exist, then your Turing machine does not exist in order to solve polycomplete problems. That's proof by contradiction. So I win. I'm pretty sure bounded P already is proven to equal bounded NP. So now I'm just proving that unbounded equals unbounded, which is pretty obvious. So basically, the only other problem that you run in here, you need like a way to step through the infiniteness in a way that is necessarily finite, because for any input into the Turing machine for a non-deterministic variant, you're necessarily only going to have a certain number of configurations based on the length. It's going to have to be finite for any step wise through this infinite input set. Okay, so the way that you do that is for any term length, and term I'm using is just as of course it's going to be in binary, because with binary you can express anything, and the number of terms you're going to have in binary based on the input of the length of binary, and we're called the length of the binary term t is 2 to the t minus 1, because you'll need your flip digit in the front. So for any 2 to the t minus 1, you can create a Turing machine that solves all possible strings with a specified term length. And you can make sure that those strings are necessarily finite, because you can only have a set number of terms, and it's based on 3 to the combination of that. It would be combinations are given such that it's the totality that I just gave you, choose 3. That's the unique number of, I don't know what you call that, but you know, the actual, like, ORs. That's the unique number of that. And then that you get what I'm saying. Can only have a unique number of clauses, so therefore your total string can only be comprised of that unique number of clauses at maximum. So you can necessarily make it bounded based on the term length, so you can have a different Turing machine for each 2 to the n, and you can traverse it sequentially such that you're just stepping through each. So it's each certificate in this is sequentially recursively enumerable. So you still can't decide the halting problem and all of those, because those aren't sequentially recursively enumerable. And you still can't solve your x time and poly time, because you're still bounded by your verifier, which is still an x time. Because basically you're just going to choose the right answer and then verify it, correct? Also, it's probably easier to solve like bounded, or what is it called? A reduced 3-sat, by just converting it to 3-sat and then plugging it into this. So that's also why x time is still kept in x time. But so basically, you just create those Turing machines, then you're kind of dovetailing it together, but instead of doing parallel, you're just sequentially going through them all until you go to the right answer, and you'd have to encode it in each state. That's why you have infinite Q. You have to encode where you've been in each state that you're in, and then you jump to the correct answer, and then verify that it's in the language, or don't verify that it's in the language and then say yes or no accordingly. And that's all you have to do to win $1 million. You just have to explain that. And you put QED at the end, and it's over. Then I'd like to also get back to log time real quick. And I still have to shoot up too, so log time, they fucked up. They said that NTM doesn't have to know the input. They just have to verify that their guess is correct. So they just jump to the right answer and then verify yes or no. But the deterministic Turing machine has to read the input, which you can't do in log time because the input is necessarily not log of the input length. So the deterministic Turing machine fails. Now, in my prior response for why NP equals P, I stated that basically you just share the same knowledge with the deterministic Turing machine, and you can only choose one certificate, which is fine, because it can only do one thing at one time, but you're necessarily saying yes or no, so it doesn't really matter which certificate you choose. You're just trying to say yes, it's in the language, or no, it's in the language. So that's the problem. So for log time, if you share the same knowledge, namely the input, so that it can choose the right answer, then the deterministic Turing machine can deterministically choose the right answer. Now I get why you've run into this conundrum, because you've instead broken it up into non-determinism is bounded by the verifier and determinism is bounded by the determined determiner. Which I think is a little bit odd, because you're able to guess the determination but not the verification. Anyway, it's not important here. Based on your model, determinism is still equal to non-determinism for classical machines, because you can only be in one state at once, and I think that's pretty obvious, but you can add me to your list of failures. And I only speak Kurtlish, so you can choose to not understand me. I don't really care. But Stephen Cook, you solved the bounded variant. You got it right. Michael Sipser, I love you to death. I hope you don't hate me. But you solved it. You did it. You did what Kurt Gödel wanted to do. The certificate is the determiner. It's fucking genius. It's simplistic to an insane point, but it's genius. It's just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. In my head. And I can write a paper with all this, but I don't really understand the point at this point. Like, they'll just add me to the list. I will say that if you then dovetail an infinite number of Turing machines, then you can decide the halting problem, and unbounded and shining's problem. This is my band-aid of today. And that's called the God machine. It's necessarily not a Turing machine, but it's fine. I'm more concerned about the God machine than this variant of Turing machine, so I don't really care if I get credit for it or not. I don't really care about the God machine either. I just think it's a cool conception. And I get it that no one's really gonna believe me. It's fine. But or know what I'm talking about. But Einstein tried to read God's mind. It was the last thing he tried to do before he died. And I think I've read it. I just think that Daddy was in the wrong field. Physics is cool too, I just know nothing about it. So, anyway, that's my proof. It's really simple. I don't think that I'm important. I just know that it's right.